All right, what's up, guys? Back with another episode of the Peace, Love, and Meat podcast. Truly, one of my favorite people on the planet Earth, Austin Legg. Just a guy that has been in and around industries that I've been involved with in the outdoor world. He's known Ross. He lives out near Ross. They're buddies, but truly, just somebody that for any amount of feedback, resource, whatever I needed, I could always call this guy and get an honest, fair shake on any situation. Just a very unique individual, tons of amazing perspectives, and actually probably had a cooler podcast before we started recording than we'll have within the hour. Um, but that'll come out in time. But you just got so many cool things going on. You're such a positive person, I mean, dude, I could brag on you all day long, but if they're asking me who is somebody that is doing it the way that you wish you had done it, I can always say Austin Legg. So I appreciate you, man. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks, man. That was a hell of an introduction, and hopefully I can live up to the expectation now, man. It's
You
Jiminy
got some.
Christmas.
Well, that's the
You
other
better
thing.
bring it now, dude.
You're just a normal dude. That's the thing is
I
like
am.
you're just a normal guy that has kind of lived by a code and mapped an existence for yourself and your family that's very, very admirable. I mean, we met a number of years ago through the outdoor space, and just from then on out, it's like you've always kind of checked in on me, looked after me, given me advice, given me direction, helped me look at job situations, things like that. So you've always been someone I felt like was in my corner for no gain. You know what I mean? And that is few and far between in an industry for sure, but in just
Yeah.
this day and age at all, it's a very rare thing, man.
For sure.
Well,
So,
I'll tell you, I used to be part of the problem, to be honest. I used to be part of the problem. It took a lot of time and like working on myself and trying to figure out what really was important, what really mattered, what helped fill my cup, but at the same time could provide value to others. That took a lot of time, man, and I'm nowhere near where I should be or want to be. But gosh, 10 years ago, yeah, it was all about me and like what was in it for me. And I fell into that trap of looking at relationships like a transaction. And if I do
yeah.
this, well, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
If someone asked me for a favor, it was like, well, how does this benefit me? And so,
hmm
yeah, man, it's been a long road, but I do appreciate it. I feel like I'm trying to take steps in the right
Well,
direction.
well, that's an interesting point that you made right there because I think a lot of people that live a normal 9 to 5 existence, not that that's a detraction, but they don't understand some of the nuance of what you're saying. So when you say a problem, I kind of read into that as a part of an industry. You were part of the problem, as in, this was about you, this was about your company or your product, and then just always trying to climb that ladder because that's the demand of the industry. It's like if you're not
Mhm.
moving up that chain, you're dead in the water. But it does start to bleed into who you are as a person. That is something that I've talked to Ross about. I've talked to people in my life about, just the depth of how just trying to remain relevant. And then even when you make the clear distinction of I want to be good in this relevancy, that's even an ongoing conversation there because how do you grow if you're good in this relevancy? You know what I mean? And grow is in the ways that these companies want you to grow, the metrics that they want to see growth when you're not willing to play the game that so many are. And that's been something that Ross and I have talked about with this peace, love, and meat. That's something that I know you've personally talked about to me. But man, how do you encourage somebody to get to the point where they regain some of themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is there's really there is no just perfect path and a perfect answer. And the thing that I've struggled with just forever, for my whole life, is how there's a duality to everything, right? So, Bo Sandoval, I've heard him say a number of times, and it's such a good piece of advice of, you build more bridges than you burn. You build more bridges than you burn. He has told me that a ton of times. And then his follow up to that is, hey, Austin, there gets to come a time in life where you get to walk across those bridges, right?
Mm.
And it gives you that big perspective of like, man, I'm going to put more good into the world. I'm going to do more good for other people. And when the time comes, like that all gets reciprocated, right? Now, the duality of that, the flip side is do you really want to keep people around in your life who are dragging you back into bad habits, who are pulling you down, who are toxic and negative and maybe putting you in an environment that's detrimental to where you're trying to go? If you cut those people out, are you burning more bridges than you're building? Right? So everything I've been trying to cultivate and do is like, how do I balance all these different things so that I can move forward, become a better person, be a better dad, do all those things, but still balance these dualities. And really what I think it's come down to is keeping my priorities in line, right? Where it's like family, faith, inner circle, friends, those types of things. Work needs to be way down at the bottom. Yeah, and like me climbing the corporate ladder is not in my top 10, and it never should be, right? Because I've never been at a job where when I left, things didn't just keep on cruising. I was a cog. I was a cog in the machine everywhere I've been. And when you realize that it's like, hey, they don't need me. Like, I fulfill a role, but this thing will survive without me. I am just a piece of this puzzle. It makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, my priority ladder needs to stay in check, and I need to make decisions and guide myself in a way that keeps that priority ladder, at the forefront.
Well, I think it really does not happen enough that people make that recognition. I mean, I know people that make the recognition but never make the change. So
Yeah.
making the recognition is huge, but making the change, and I think, when you talk about like the outdoor industry, it's a small, small world, right?
Very.
And speaking of burning bridges or stepping on toes or hurting feelings, however you want to put it, when you make changes for yourself, inevitably it seems to come back in a negative way almost automatically from the
Yeah.
industry at large, but then you find your way again. I would say that I've had several iterations of this within Sorinex Outdoors and the industry space in and of itself, and just from switching from the compound to the recurve. All the people that you meet and the people that seemingly cared about you really, really hard one minute, and then when you're not necessarily playing their music, they don't care as much.
Yeah.
That's another thing you've got to realize too. So if you're just talking to somebody who is getting into the industry or somebody that maybe you think has a really good potential to do some real good, what would be some of the maybe top 5 things you would suggest to them just to navigate a little better than others do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, probably in all of that, is figure out your why and keep your why. You know, if your why is to like get rich and famous and like be on YouTube and have a show and do all those things, like, okay, like that's great. If that's what you want to do and that's your why, that's great. Like keep that your priority, and like people will help you get there. I don't think that's the why for most people though, right? I think the why for most people is probably, spend time with kids, get back in touch with my ancestors and provide meat for the family. And right, there's some pretty noble whys. But I think keeping that why at the very top will help set the direction and like build a foundation for where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And that's generally the first thing to go out the window. Right?
Yeah.
Is when the first time somebody says, oh, like, you are a whatever traditional bow hunter, and well, here's this opportunity to do this. Boom, like I'm taking it because it's an opportunity and I need to take it. Man, absolutely. When opportunities are there, take them. But you got to remember why you're doing this in the first place. And then I think the next part of it would really be, one thing that I have seen is people just completely lose themselves in the industry, because they begin idolizing people and begin idolizing brands, and they begin idolizing like this image of what they think they want to be.
Yeah.
And I've literally seen it. I won't name names, but I have literally seen it like ruin families because
Yeah.
people get into this industry and they're they're way outside their budget on what they should be spending. They're spending way too much time away from their family. And it ends up ruining them. And that's a
Yeah.
very real concern. Like things need to be kept in balance for this to be a long-term, sustainable, healthy, happy, fun hobby, you
Yeah.
know? As much as people
Yeah.
want to say like, oh, like hunting's a lifestyle for me. No, it's not. Like it's not. It is a
Yeah.
hobby. It's something
Yeah.
we do for fun and we enjoy it.
Very
And
few
so like
people,
all
very few
hobbies, it
people
needs to be
have it as,
balanced with
yeah,
everything else.
very few people have it as the
Um,
actual
Yeah.
thing.
and so with that, then my next point would be you need to surround yourself with the right people,
Yeah.
right? So surround yourself with, if you're a family oriented person, surround yourself with guys who are other family oriented people that aren't going to, be putting you in situations or making you do things that maybe otherwise compromise,
Yeah.
your normal set of values. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty common. Um, when when you're in a hunting camp, for a lot of people, it's just kind of like, oh, the rules don't apply. Maybe not the rules, but like my moral conduct doesn't apply anymore, because I'm in a different state. I'm away from home and I'm doing all these things. I can kind of just do whatever. Man, that's not a position I want to be in. I don't want to be put in situations where I have to be the guy who's like, oh, let's not do that. Let's not do
Right.
this. Like, I don't, I just want to be around people that uplift me and make me want to be better. And not only help me be a better hunter, but a better man, a better father, and those things.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last thing I would probably say is along the lines of social media and expectations, right? So, when I was new to getting into hunting and getting into the outdoors, social media wasn't a thing yet. Like we kind of had Facebook, but even Facebook was still pretty new.
Yep.
And so I remember not having, like, there was no pressure. It was just like, I'm going to figure this out. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have people helping me. Like, I just kind of started going out on my own. And I found a couple guys. I told Ross this story one time. I found a
Mhm.
couple guys that were, my age and had been hunting their whole lives and stuff. And I asked them, I didn't know that it wasn't, acceptable to be like, hey, like, so where do you hunt? I'm brand new to this. I don't know anything. And so I was just like, hey guys, like, would you mind telling me like some places I could go? Like, where do you guys kill all these deer? And our local ski mountain, which is like right outside, it's just like right over here. They're like, oh man, we just hunt up at Bogus Basin. Like, there's deer all over the ski slopes out there. And I'm like, great, I'll go there. And so for 2 years, 2 years, I was hiking around with my rifle on the ski slopes, like under the lifts, and there's like maintenance workers and like grounds stuff, just like, who is this guy? And in 2 years, I saw like maybe 5 does, never saw a buck.
Mhm.
And I remember driving home from the mountain one day. I'm driving home, and on the freeway, there was a spot kind of close to downtown where the river is, and I see this massive buck like come up out of the brush and just walk along the freeway. And I was like, man, I've spent 2 seasons just trying to see a buck, and now
Yes.
here I find one driving home on the side of the freeway. I was like, this is just not meant to be. But man, sure enough, like I just kept at it, and it was so painful, dude. It was so hard to start seeing success. But you know what? I was okay with killing small animals.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
was okay with killing two. I killed my first like 3 or 4 deer were all little 2-point bucks.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
my first elk, I killed a spike elk. I killed a small bear. I was just okay with it because I didn't care what people said.
Yeah.
I wanted the experience. I wanted to learn. I wanted to like get used to pulling the trigger. And then as things got better, it's like, okay, now I can put my own set of expectations on myself.
Yep.
I can be the one to tell me, I want this type of deer, or I want this type of bear, or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but the social media thing, man, I see people, I take a lot of first time people hunting, and I've taken probably 15 first time hunters out to kill deer. And I always, before we go, say, hey, give me a little idea what you're looking for. Like, send me a few pictures, send me, give me an idea of what our expectations are. Like, seriously, like tell me what your expectations
Put a
are. That way
Pinterest
I
board
can,
together.
make sure we're
This
on the
is
same
going
page.
one or two. This is going one of two ways.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, this is like a kaibab deer. Like you're sending me like
Yeah.
220-inch like strip bucks. What is going on? Like
Yeah.
the expectation of people is so crazy. And so, I really, that's just it. It's like set your own expectations for you and
Yeah.
ignore what people say, ignore the comments, and just be happy with what you can do for yourself.
Dude,
Well, I think social media 2024, like I think when we started, when you and I first met, back 17, 18, somewhere in that area, it was even a different world then. But
Hmm.
now it's like there's such a demand. But you know what has really kind of influenced me, I will say, is the recurve community. One, because man, you go to some of those traditional groups on Facebook, and that's really the only reason I go to Facebook anymore is because they do have some active forums on there for guys. A lot of questions, a lot of newbie questions, and I still
Hmm.
consider myself a newbie. But just the overwhelming feeling of if somebody kills a doe, it's a congratulations. If somebody kills a spike buck, it's a congratulations. And I was talking to Randy Cooling. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but
Hmm.
he's a recurve guy. He owns Safari Tough. They make some traditional equipment and whatnot. And he's killed 23 of the 29 or 22 of the 29. And he was like, whenever I'm hunting a new species, he said, I just find a good representation of that. He was like, I plan on killing whatever is a good hunt for me, whatever feels good. And he said, sometimes a small buck makes me feel good, and that's a good first one. And sometimes you get lucky and it's a big one. But having somebody like that I really, really respect the way they live, the way they do things, changed myself because I've told Ross, I started to get into that mode of let's kill the biggest thing we can kill. You
Yeah.
know, you could almost start imagining that grip and grin before you'd even step foot on the hunting soil. So when we were in Mexico, not that long ago, it was earlier this year, I had a really good hunt, but I shot a coos deer down there. And I mean, it was just a good little 2x2. Nothing, I mean, very like young 2x2, just a little split guy. But the cool thing about him is there were some bigger bucks that I definitely, if it was a phone target, I would have shot at all day.
Hmm.
And I did shoot at a buck that was a very good buck at a very killable distance. And I'm telling you, his sternum hit the ground when I shot, and it just went over the bend of his back. And so, it's like after that miss, I was like, man, these things are jumpy. I'm with my recurve. Gotta take something that comes in a little bit closer and make a better shot. And this little guy came in and he fought a bigger buck. He fought a similar sized buck, and he just had a swagger about him. And at 11 yards, he started scratching his nose perfectly broadside. Gave me enough of a chance to get a draw on him. He's scratching his nose again. He puts it down. As soon as he leveled up, he was just standing there, and it went through both shoulders. And dude, that was one of the happiest deer of my life because one,
Hmm.
I had held off on a true giant that Dale Perry ended up killing a few days later. Like it's one that I wanted very, very badly, but I was like, don't even pick your bow up because there's no chance where he's at. Just let him walk. I was proud
Hmm.
of that because I've made that mistake before. And then after the miss, a very good shot on a very cool deer. It just nature happens and they duck. And then to go back and see this little guy just kind of kick the shit out of everything in the area, and then I get a shot on him, and he died like 15 yards away, like perfect. It was the best shot with a recurve on any animal of my life. Through both shoulders, he crumbled up 15 yards away, and it was like if you post that picture of that deer and you see how
Hmm.
happy I am, and you just look at the context of how happy I am, nobody should say a negative word about it. But
Hmm.
inevitably, in 2024 on the internet, you're going to get some of that negativity space. But that's where it really comes down to your why and what matters to you. Because I'm more proud to send that to a guy like you or a Randy Cooling or share that with people that are close to me and understand what I'm on this path for than to let it be detracted by somebody on the internet that doesn't understand. So I mean, it's a very important point that you make right there. But how do you right now, with all the success that you've had in the outdoor space, in the hunting field, with all the opportunities you have, how do you still stay kind of committed to not getting sucked back into that when you have bigger goals? I mean, it's
Yeah.
so easy to do. Somebody says, hey, come on this hunt, come on this hunt, come on this hunt. Next thing you know, you turn around and your fall is full, but maybe you've given up some things that you actually wanted to do that, you know?
Yeah. The funny thing is I've gone through such an evolution, man. And my my latest evolution, what I would say is, if you were to say, "Hey, Austin, tell me your favorite hunting story." I mean, I might think about it for a minute, but I'll probably tell you one where it was like me and one of my brothers, me and one of my friends, me and it was someone close to me, right?
Sure.
Because you create this just it's funny, it's sentimental value, like there's all these emotions tied to it. I wouldn't tell you about like some solo hunt that I went on where I was like, man, I hiked 50 miles and I was hard and I killed this, I packed it up. Like I wouldn't tell you that story. And so the evolution that I'm on right now has gone from being all about me, about being, I want to hike in and I want to do this because then I don't have people complaining and I don't have to put up with arguing and whatever. I can just do me. I did that for a long time. And now where I'm going is more into this. I want to spend the hunt time with people that I care about because we create these memories that are like it's hilarious, but it's also like there's laughing, there's tears, there's hugging, there's
Yep.
high fives, there's all those emotions, and that's like when you ask me those things, that's what comes to mind. And
Yeah.
so I don't really do the like when people send me a DM like, hey, come on this hunt opportunity. I just don't really have the desire to go do those things.
Yeah.
And I have less and less of a desire to go do things by myself anymore because it's only serving me. And then like, what do I do with that? Like, yeah, it's a great learning opportunity. The reason I've got to where I am is because I did that. I've spent years by myself, like in the
Yeah.
woods doing that. But I'm just at a different point now. And now I want
Yeah.
to make like lasting memories with people I care about. And that's
Well,
that's
you also
really important.
well, all of this podcast leading to this point, you also need verification for when you see Sasquatch. You also need a right hand individual there. No?
Dude, I feel like you guys already know this. Maybe you bonked your head. But my, so, no, hold on. Actually, there's something funny about this. So, okay, so my wife and I did see one, 100%, no doubt in my mind. My wife was with me. We both know what we saw. It's a real thing, okay?
Okay.
That was in 2011. And was it last night? No, 2 nights ago, we're sitting on our back porch, and our back porch we have like this like 5 mile unobstructed view of the sky. And it's pitch black. There's no city lights. There was no moonlight. So we could see every star. And so we're sitting out there and it was like shooting star, shooting star, shooting star. It was so fun. And we're both looking up and we see this like camera flash in the sky. It was just like this boom, just such a big bright light all at once. And then it was gone. And we were both just like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And then she was like, Austin, you cannot tell anybody about that because people are going to be like, you are already crazy. And she's like, what,
Doesn't even
why do we
matter.
keep why do we keep seeing these things that like nobody wants to accept or listen to? But I'm telling you, man, there's stuff going on out there. I don't know
Team
what it
Squatch,
is.
baby. Team
Yep.
Squatch. It's so
Well,
funny. It's
go
so
ahead.
funny. I was just gonna say it's so funny because I am in a lot of my other friend groups as well. I am viewed as that guy too, where it's like, and me and you talked about it when we were hanging out. It's like the only question I ever need to ask is like, why can't this be a thing? Like nobody's ever given me a good answer as to like, why can't any of this be real, like when we're talking about these kind of things. And I have gone down so many fun, and it's just freaking fun to think about. That's the other thing, like there's so many things that we can't be that arrogant to believe that we have it all figured out in that regard. Like, and we've talked about like the Squatch and that kind of thing, but the thing for me, dude, is the oceans and
Hmm.
like and the sea monsters and all that kind of stuff. Like I am so in on all of that it's funny to see people's reactions when you're like, dude, really? Like you're gonna you're going to be this guy and bring this up again and be the loon. And I'm like, I got zero problem being that dude, man.
So, so
Wait, hold on. So,
where did it start for you, Austin? Where did it start?
okay, I'll tell you where it started with this. I gotta tell you this story, man. Okay. So it started prior to when I got into hunting and I really started getting into backpacking and stuff. And Idaho has so much just rugged, remote, crazy wilderness terrain. And I knew a lot of guys who worked for the Forest Service and spent a lot of time outdoors. And dude, people like when you're sitting around a campfire, it's like people go from just normal small talk conversation to like, hey, you guys want to talk about like aliens and other dimensions? You know, like for whatever reason,
Yes.
campfires just bring out the best conversation. And so it's like you be sitting around a campfire and people just like, hey, you guys ever seen anything? And people just start telling stories. And so, growing up, I'd heard just all these stories. And so I felt like I wanted to believe, but I had nothing telling me that I had no evidence, but I also had no evidence of why it couldn't be real. So then in 2011, my wife and I are driving through Nevada and we see what both of us are completely convinced was a Sasquatch. Find out later in life, and here, like you guys can laugh about this, but I find out later in life that area of Nevada is like this hot spot of not only sightings, but there's this underground cave system. And if you look at like, there's a social media page, I think it's called like Sasquatch mapping, but they map like sightings and hotspots on those things. And in this section of Nevada, they have all these cave systems. And like, dude, these squatches will use the caves and then they'll pop up over here and then go back and then they'll pop over here. And I was like, that's literally what happened. Like that is like, this is it.
Exactly where we were.
So I'm telling people this story and like, I'm a believer. I'm all in. I'm a self-proclaimed expert at this point. So fast forward to, I can't even remember what year it was, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm out at Jamie Shira and Baker Levitt's farm in Georgia, and I'm whitetail hunting out there. On my way to the airport, I see a sign that's like Sasquatch Museum 400 miles ahead or something. And I'm like, looking at my clock and I'm like, oh, my flight's in like 6 hours. I can make it. And so I just go for it, right? It's like, I think it was in like North Carolina or something. So I just book it and I go. So I get to the Sasquatch Museum and I'm so happy, dude. I'm like a kid in a candy shop. I get my phone out and I'm doing an Instagram story and I'm like doing this, and I'm like, hey guys, I'm here at the Sasquatch Museum. I'm going to be doing like a guest speaking thing because they wanted to hear from a Sasquatch expert. I'm totally just joking, right? I'm just, I'm like, they wanted to hear from a Sasquatch expert. So here I am. I'm going to be speaking in here and I tag them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A few minutes goes by. I go into the gift shop, looking around, and the lady comes up to me and she goes, oh my gosh, we didn't have you down today as a speaker. And I'm like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is getting real, And she's like, we didn't have you down as a speaker. And I'm like, oh, well, and like before I can say like it was a joke, she's like, but it's okay. We can pull this together. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So she goes, just give us a few minutes. I'm like, okay. So she starts like corralling all the people. There's a lot of people here. She like corrals the people in the gift shop, corrals the people like in the exhibits, brings it together, puts me like up in this little section, kind of in the back, and we just go for it. And I'm like, screw it. Like you just gotta grab life and go with it. So I do this like 20-minute lecture on Sasquatch. Just totally impromptu,
dude.
right? Just totally impromptu.
That's so good.
So after the fact, like afterwards, I start joking on like, yeah, now that I've given lectures at Bigfoot, at museums and things,
Now you're verified.
I'm like a leading expert. So that's where the whole like I'm a leading expert thing came from. So then to just like continue this, I started joking around and saying that I'm the nation's 5th leading expert. I've been saying that now for probably legitimately, I have been saying this for probably 5 or 6 years. Okay. I get a phone call probably 3 months ago from a guy filming a documentary. And he's like, hey, just want to chat and pick your brain on some things, maybe get some quotes. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, why are you calling me? He's like, well, I heard you say you're the nation's fifth leading expert on Sasquatch. And I go, and I start laughing, and I'm like, well, I'll be honest, dude. Like, I don't have like a zoology degree. I'm just kind of a self-proclaimed expert. And he goes, Austin, look, do you really think there's like a regulating body, like board of directors giving out titles? He's like, as far as anyone's concerned, you might be the leading expert in Sasquatch. So I've kind of just taken the mantle and ran with it.
That's so
and
good.
I'm happy to bear the burden, man.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
What would make you like the happiest in regards to that story? Would it be like some definitive proof on your part that you could encapsulate or photograph, or I mean, on your end of the spectrum, what would be like the to make you selfish again? What would make this like the highest achievement point for you? Like a selfie with one?
Dude, I'm actually really on the fence about this. Here's why. People are like, dude, if you saw one, would you shoot it? And my answer is no, like a definitive no, I wouldn't. The guy who I would say is the leading expert, he's a professor at Idaho State University. But he thinks there's about 200 in the state of Idaho. Okay. For me to be like, I'm happy, wouldn't actually be for them to like have a carcass or a body or like definitive proof, because then all these bandwagon haters of me for the last 20 years are just going to be like, yeah, no, he's real, like, great. And I'm going to be like, no, I want apologies from every single one of you.
Retribution.
And so it's almost like at this point, it's almost like I want to continue to have the divide of like the believers and the non-believers, and the haters and the non-haters, because it's honestly more fun this way. Like I believe what I believe based on what I saw, and it's fun. It's like a fun conversation point, talking point. You get talking about around the fire, and like, dude, the most like dead serious old timer guys who are like cowboys and all these things will be like, yeah, no, I saw something too. I'll tell you, and like you hear these cool stories. But man, once everybody knows and like everyone's on board, it's just not the same. So I'm kind of like, at this point, I'm kind of like, let's just let them be, leave them alone, let them do their thing.
Did you see the there's a video kind of circulating right now. I don't know how viral it is, but it's of this. I guess he's a crab fisherman up north, but he's going along in this boat, and there's like these streaks in the water outpacing the boat. You know what I mean? Like this is a full charging crab ship, and there's these streaks in the water, and you can hear this audible singing. Have you guys seen that yet?
Yes. Yep.
So I want to believe in mermaids so bad, dude.
Yes.
So freaking bad.
Yes.
So my grandfather was in the Navy, and he talked about some of that stuff. And actually, my whole right arm tattoo is dedicated to a story he told me when I was a kid. About this big skull-headed octopus that engulfed a ship, and a shark came out. So that's what my whole arm is. So I'm fascinated with those old stories, but specifically sirens and mermaids. Probably because of the Little Mermaid when we were a kid, it made reference again. But anyway, it's just like we really couldn't possibly know everything. Like we're still finding new species. We're finding out records of extinct species. I even saw that Adam Greentree and another guy down in Australia were looking for the Tasmanian tiger. There's been reoccurring sightings of this thing, and that in of itself is a pretty fascinating animal because it's a marsupial, but it has the tiger stripes and it looks and moves somewhat like a dog. So it's like it's this weird kind of crisscross, and I think they did granted, they did an effort to bring light to the study or the hope of finding one, but I think they gave it like or something like that. It's like you're going to the densest place in Australia and like giving it 36 hours to find this thing. Like, good luck. But it's the thought of those type of things, and I don't know if it's just because I've been to the place where you're talking about in North Carolina just not too long ago, driving back from Summer Strong, but the idea that something's out there, I think just makes life cooler. You know what I mean? Like to think that there's things that we don't know, we don't understand. It doesn't cause me stress or anxiety like I think it does for some people. For me, that's like the magic elixir of life is when you start to see things that you once thought were impossible, or conceived that were long and gone. Like I just don't know if anything that's ever been here ever goes away. And I mean,
Well,
not necessarily like
yeah.
dinosaurs go away for a while, but I think that there's a very high likelihood that somewhere down the line they could come back again. I don't think that if anything could exist once, it couldn't exist again.
Well, and my whole thing with a lot of the stories going back, you know, all throughout all of human civilization, like you look at these different in cultures all over different parts of the world, there are stories about creatures that draw similarities from places on the other side of the planet. Like there's no way in the times when we didn't have global communication or even regional communication for the most part, that you could like have that many things be that similar across centuries or thousands of years, and then have it be like just like, oh, they were all just high on mushrooms and just making stuff up. Like, no, like
Yeah.
there's records of dragons and like all this stuff.
Listen, you're getting me fired
man.
up now. You're getting me fired up, okay? There should not be cave drawings in Spain of dragons and almost identical drawings in China of
Yes.
dragons from the same time
Yes.
period. Like, that
Yes.
should not be a thing. Why is that a thing? Dragons were real. Get out of my face if you don't believe it. Like, it's just insane.
All right. So, something that's really interesting to me, obviously you guys have heard of Tim Dillon, the comedian. He's an idiot, but he's actually, he plays a perfect idiot because he's very intelligent, and he has a lot of good insights on things. But him and Rogan were talking on a podcast a few months ago, and this only happened. I listened to the Terrence Howard episode, which already kind of got the wheels turning. I'm not buying in on that, but it's like, it's good to question things, right? Like, there's some good questions to be asked after that episode. But it went to playing the Tim Dillon episode, and he was talking about, the history of the world and all this stuff. And when you really break down history and advancement, it's a confusing conversation because it's like, what do we generally accept? That it's the earth is at least, or humans have or at least been around a few 100,000 years, if not longer. The earth is at least a few billion years old. Well, when you look at the Industrial Revolution, let's just say since 1830, okay, when you get the cotton gin and you start to get the introduction of the automobile, and we've only been flying for 120 years, right? So you have basically, let's call it 200 years of advancement from horse and buggy, farming with our hands to industrialize AI on the precipice of every single thing, right? 200 years. So to fall into the category of like, the Gobekli Tepe stuff, Graham Hancock, or some of that stuff where these civilizations have evolved, and you're a big Egypt guy. You love Egypt, Austin.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
having gone there, what is the possibility? And this is obviously just bullshit talking, but like that we've had advanced civilizations, extreme regressions because of weather, climate, whatever it may be, and then it only
Floods.
takes 200 years or so of advancement to get to multiple stages of technology that could have regressed and evolved over time, numerous iterations. I mean, when you start to break down history in these terms, it gets way, way cooler for me. Like the fact that we could have been civilized and then decivilized and came back. Because when you start to look at, there was African ships in San Diego from a time period that they shouldn't have even been able to sail. The stuff in all throughout South America that's just been eroded because of weather and deforestation and stuff. But anyway, like in all of this context, how excited does it make you to think that we know less than we think we know?
Yeah, I mean, the one question I wish I had an answer to really bad is the history of America, because
Yeah.
I feel like everybody has completely disregarded that Columbus found America. We're past that. It may still be in textbooks, but at this point, it's like it could have been the Vikings, it could have been the Chinese. There's arguing that it could have been the Polynesians. Like I've even heard, what was the other one I heard the other day? Oh, someone from Africa. I can't remember where, but they were like looking at certain animal bones that they had found, and like we've only seen these bones in Africa. I can't remember who it was, but so there's all these arguments on who it could have been. Like I would love to have a better understanding of the United States history going back 100,000 years plus. Like that would make me so happy.
Mm.
But I'm glad you brought up Egypt, man, because I've been there twice and I'm ready to go again. Like I'll probably go again in the next couple of years because it really is the most fascinating place. It is the whole place is an open air museum. It's so fascinating. And I think there is a certain amount of design and architecture and engineering that they were capable of that is mind blowing, right? So if you Google, if you look up this place called Abu Simbel or Abu Simbel, it's in Aswan, which is way down in southern Egypt. And what it was if you look at a map of Egypt, the Nile doesn't flow from north to south. The Nile flows from the south north. So it flows from Sudan north and then drains up, or it goes into all of its tributaries north of Cairo.
Yep.
And so
fifth leading expert on Egypt.
Maybe. And so what? Well, hold on, because I'm about to cook on this one. Okay, let me put my chef hat on here. So Ramses, who was the pharaoh at the time, built this huge temple right on the Nile River at the start of his kingdom in Egypt. And the reason he did that was because it was this big temple, and it was 4 statues of him. And like one he's holding like a dagger, and one he's holding a whip, in one he's holding like a scroll, and in one he's holding something else, right? And he's basically telling people like, hey, if you come into my kingdom, like I'm gonna kick the shit out of you. Like this is your warning. Like I'm not building a gate, but I'm building a giant, picture of myself to let you know if you come here with bad intentions, what's gonna happen. And if you go inside this temple, he has all these carvings of him like holding multiple people by the head and like beheading them. I mean, telling these just beautiful stories of battles and his successes. Okay. Now, what's so amazing about the location of this temple is every year on his coronation day, the sun comes at the perfect angle where it shoots all the way through the front door of the temple, all the way through to the back, and it perfectly lights up a statue of him sitting in his, pharaoh throne in the very back of this temple. The fact that they were able to build this thing with such precision, knowing, the alignment of the stars, the celestial calendar of the sun and how the earth moves, is so fascinating to me. So I think there is a certain amount of like I said, like the engineering, the design, the architecture that we don't give them enough credit for. But then when you go and stand next to the pyramids, and I know it gets talked about all the time. It's like one of the most talked about, wonders of the world. When you stand next to those blocks, dude, there's no way. There's just no freaking way. They are the size of this room, and you stand next to them, and there's no way people could have moved those things. I just don't get it.
And the cut on them being as precise. I mean, like, and that's the thing I think with the technology conversation that people tend to like misunderstand. When they think advanced technology, they think that we have what is considered advanced technology. So anything that could have been that in the past had to have looked like what we have now, not considering like the other forms of just, maybe it wasn't like literal computers, right? But it was incredibly advanced forms of doing things that for whatever reason were lost, and more advanced in a lot of ways than what we have now for certain things. It wasn't like they're all
the
running
Catholic
around with
Church is why it was lost.
Big part of it. Yeah.
And the Library of Alexandria.
Yes,
that's what I was going to say. At the Library of Alexandria, but that burned down.
It held the history of the world.
Everything, right? It probably had a step-by-step guide on how they built the pyramids,
Dude, there was a meme the other day that I almost sent it to you, Austin, because it was just about that. It made me laugh so hard because it literally was like one of those literally meme moments where the video was like, I have this recurring dream where I'm a librarian, but I'm also the most like gifted soldier that there is, and my task is defending the Library of Alexandria. It's like, that's my recurring dream, to be able to defend the destruction of it. I'm like, dude, yes.
Dude, that's an important task, and you failed. So.
Exactly. The one that I was going to tell you, the one I gotten into I can't remember how, this has been several months now, but the whole thing with Atlantis is the one that like really, and to go back even further, like I'll answer Brandon's question, like, cause you asked where it's kind of started for you. And I can tell you exactly how it started for me and it was just because of my age at the time, right? I was 12, almost 13 years old when the first National Treasure movie came out. And dude, that movie wrecked me in so many good ways. Like that literally was the movie that made me just fanatic about US history for what, but then like just the idea that there's all of these things that were purposefully hidden and lost and like designed to never be found. And like that really was like the genesis. I'm like, dude, freaking Nick Cage, man, is just turning over the whole model of everything in history. I'm like, that is just the most rad thing ever. And that really was like the thing. But the whole Atlantis thing is so wild when you read, I think it was Plato who was talking about Atlantis and talking about literally the design of the concentric circles of how the city was built. And I can't remember the name of the place now, but basically everything that he described down to the measurement of how it was described sits in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Western Africa. Yes.
Well, dude, that used to be an ocean, or more or less like a thriving rainforest.
And because of where the mountains are, I think to the northwest of it, like they had said that was the perfect, like that would be where all the water came from that flowed right into this place, and it was just like this most lush green deal. And I mean, there are some ways to take that into what happened and all that kind of stuff. But those are the kind of things where I'm like, literally, I can trace all that back to freaking National Treasure Nick Cage.
Well, two things. So Dan Brown, Da Vinci Code, actually the National Treasure, National Treasure was the precursor to the Da Vinci Code. If you didn't know that, just so you know, like that was the original unraveling of history. Yes. But Dan Brown, some of his works like really got me motivated to like look at things differently. And when you think about National Treasure kind of like as a spoof movie or kind of like just fiction, the fact of the matter is the people that rebelled against England, the forefathers, they did have to speak in code. They had to write in a specific shorthand. They had to hide things with watermarks. They had to do all kinds of things to insulate the messages that they were sending. But I'll tell you another one that's fascinated me. Like I've been a World War II guy for a long time, and we've talked about that at the end. But when we were down in Argentina, being in Bariloche, dude, that is like hotspot German submarine port for like Bavaria to enter into South America. Like the buildings, the structure of all that stuff, the way that the people speak. There's a freaking German beer hall, and it's just like nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to like really delve into that. But man, when you start to look and see that some of these homes were built with materials from Berlin or from different regions throughout, what's the other one? Not Germany. What's the one that's right beside it? I can't even remember. But anyway, Belgium. All these artifacts from this region, dude. It just opens up like, holy shit! Like history is the coolest thing ever. Like Dan Carlin, his hardcore history stuff fires me up. The Mongol one, that's where I got started because of Red. But he's got some really just unbelievable, fascinating breakdowns of history. And that's what's coolest to me is like you get somebody like Austin who's got one flavor across like, it's a Sasquatch thing, but you have general like appeal to a multitude of things. But that's the coolest thing about history is like somebody gets fanatical about one person or one situation, and you can learn so much because like even I was telling Ross a couple episodes ago, there's a book by Glenn Beck that highlights in American history the second tier of players in every great story. So instead of like Thomas Jefferson at Versailles, it's the people that kind of instructed and helped him. So it's the second fiddle in the great stories of American history. And I love that stuff because these are the people who actually probably had more sweat, blood, and tears in the effort, but Thomas Jefferson was the name in the face. You know what I mean? So it's just really cool to me to talk to people who are just as equally ecstatic about things that really like Atlantis. I've never really thought about it
Yeah.
that much.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt, I've thought about it some, but I guess one thing that I want to ask you guys, have you seen recently Antarctica being broken down as research centers, and who
Antarctica,
owns
dude.
the most of the fucking research centers down there? It's the Rockefeller family.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like there is evidence that suggests that Antarctica was shifted to the southern pole, and then it has all of these Earth secrets encompassed in the ice somewhere. And all of these countries have these major, learning stations, whatever, down there. But the Rockefeller family's had one there since the 70s. And they've been digging and mining and looking and all this other stuff. What do you guys think about that? I mean, how much do you think is actually potentially held in ice?
Why else would there be, like, it's one of the only treaties that, like, the majority of all countries on Earth have with each other, is like, you can't just go to Antarctica whenever you want and just explore around or whatever. It's like one of the only things that everybody in the world, apparently all the governments agree on. Like, no, you can't just roam all of Antarctica whenever, because there's stuff down there we can't let everybody see.
Dude, I love the idea. I love the idea that there's like deadly contagions and animals we've never discovered, and
Yeah.
maybe like a race of like ice zombies. Like, I love the
Giants.
idea that the ice has stuff trapped in it. Like, I'm so into that. Like, every mound you see is just
Yeah.
like the burial site of a giant and not,
Yes.
a mound.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
so into it, dude. Oh man.
Good.
I don't know.
What would be one species that you would bring back? Like, of all the
Ooh.
species that you know of, what would be the one that you would bring back?
In a Jurassic Park type scenario.
Oh man, that's such a good question.
Because they're working on the mammoth right now, dude.
Yeah, they're working on the mammoth.
I mean, I think if they get the mammoth, like the true story about the mammoth is it's like that's probably one of the safer endeavors.
Yeah.
It's not going to go out and kill people or kill. Well, I don't know. They might kill people because elephants kill a lot of Africans. So a lot
And
of
whatever they
Canadian
mixed the DNA, I'm just basing it all off of my whatever
Jurassic Park knowledge.
John Hammond
Yeah,
science.
exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
whatever they mixed it with in order to bring it back.
Yeah.
All right, here's guys, I'll tell you, this is what I would do. I don't know the name of it, but I know that there were some gigantic like water dinosaurs back in the day, right? Things that make, the size of bigger than sharks, like the size of whales, but they were dinosaurs that had whatever. I want to bring one of those back. Yeah, a water giant, right? I want to bring one of those back. Then I want to put a collar on him, okay? So we know where he's going. Maybe with like 360 cameras, okay? We send him down to the depths of the ocean, and if he gets eaten, then we know, like, okay, there is stuff in this ocean. Yeah,
there's always a bigger fish.
We bring something back to use it as bait to figure out what's really going on in the ocean.
Dude, I'll tell you what. I was at Washington D.C. at the Smithsonian. I got to stand inside. I think it's the Smithsonian. I got to stand inside the megalodon, the mouth.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm 6'2". The megalodon would have engulfed me in one like full body bite.
Its teeth are like as long as my leg. Like it's
its teeth are like they're massive. Actually, Kip Fulks gave me a megalodon tooth from I think North Carolina. That was a pretty cool gift. I mean, when you start to see that and you start to think about, okay, this was attached to like a 40-foot body, or a 50-foot body. I can't even comprehend. I've seen 8-foot hammerheads. I've seen, some 6.5, 7-foot tiger sharks caught. And it's like, that's an impressive beast in and of itself. But to see a 50-foot shark,
well, and the one that's cool for me too is even if we make it more like bring it to more modern things that are living right now, the story that I always think of, it's like one of the most popular stories that Ranella told was the whole bear on a Fognac island that brushed them and all that kind of stuff. But they, they're telling the story like because of how far away that island is from the mainland, like the bears that live there are virtually unchanged for like their entire, like there was no mixing or anything. So that's why they're a foot bigger than everything that, that we traditionally know as brown bears and that kind of, I mean, so there's things like that. They're like, that can be so isolated.
Yeah, I'm
even
with
still,
that.
even still, that they can be so isolated that they're virtually unchanged from how they've always been, that we just don't even grasp the size of certain animals and other things that probably are still around, you know?
Have you ever
Dude,
seen an Irish elk? Have you ever seen that one?
yes.
Dude,
It's like a
it's bigger.
moose, dude.
It's
Yeah.
bigger than a moose.
Yeah.
My favorite that I would probably bring back is the Lafrons, which is, it's a bison, and it's 8.5 feet at
Yeah.
the hump,
Yes.
but it's got 6.5 foot antlers
Yep.
or horns.
Oh man.
You know, like it looks like a Texas Longhorn on a giant buffalo. That would be a cool one.
Dude, you know, speaking of impacts that movies made on us as kids, Jaws screwed me up so bad. And even to this day, as an adult,
Seriously, dude.
I'm scared of sharks. Like, dude, like the thought of bringing back scary water species, I was thinking about that after I said it, and I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, that's the
Immediately
dumbest
changed my
thing ever.
mind.
Like, I already, when I get to a point in the ocean where I can't touch, right away, I'm just like, oh, shark's gonna eat me. Like, I'm
Yep.
dead. That's it.
Well, I was the kid that was like, the lifeguard was like, all right, get back in, blowing the whistle,
Oh,
you know, like
dude.
waving. I was that kid. I went deep sea fishing in Gulf Shores, Alabama, just a couple days before Katrina hit. So, you know, like the storm is pushing everything in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we're going out, we had a crazy peg leg captain. No shit, like crazy peg leg, drunk bastard. And everybody else, I've told Ross this story. Like, when we get there, it's like 5:15 in the morning. All the other captains are like, yeah, we're going to go 2 miles out. We can refund you. We're just not going to take a full day trip because of the storm. Our captain's like, if you want to catch some fish, today is the day. He said they're in because of the storm.
Yep.
So we go out, and dude, it's just like, I'm thinking, this is insane as it is. We got, I want to say, a half a mile off of the coast. It's just like a 30-foot rip. I mean, like a barrier line of jellyfish. Okay. I mean, 30 feet wide, all these little softball sized jellyfish just condensed together. Well, guess what's on the other side of the fucking jellyfish? Sharks by about 1 million.
Yep.
Like, it was like, I had never, like, it would be, honest to God, like if you went to a place where you were just going to, like if you went to your local Tractor Supply and they had goldfish in a tank and you were going to go in there and just pick out your goldfish to take home, that's what it looked like with sharks. I mean, these were
Ugh.
3-footers, 4-footers, you know, they're the occasional giant. It was enough that I was like, they're in this water. Like, it was a visual recognition that if this storm wasn't here, they would have been dispersed. But here they are. And they're
Mhm.
always in this water. Dude, I have been very, very cautious of getting much more than like weight. Like the bottom of my shorts get wet, I'm good.
So I've been training for this Ironman, you know, and
Yeah, I let you down. I'm
everyone's
sorry.
like, no, you did not let me down. But everyone's like, man, where are you gonna do it? Like, are you gonna go to Hawaii? Are you gonna go to this? I'm like, absolutely not. I will only do it in a river.
Yeah.
That's how
Deep
childish
lakes
this
are out
is
of the
for me.
question. Even deep.
Yeah, oh, dude, 100%. I will only do it in a river, and then when I get scared, I'm gonna swim to the bank and be like, okay, it's fine, and then swim back out. Like, dude, it's so bad.
Oh my
Ugh.
gosh, man.
But I know
Sharks
there's
are the
people out there
worst.
like me.
We had
Yeah,
when
they
we
are.
were younger, we were up camping, and we got a few minutes here, but when we were up camping up in at Anderson, Austin, you know where that is.
Yeah.
Anderson Lake. There's those hot springs that are right under the bridge on your way from
Yeah.
Pine to Featherville, right there. And I remember this so vividly. We were like, I was like maybe 10 or 11. I had a buddy with me who's a year younger than me. My sister's 2 years younger. There was like a group of us that are all from the ages of like 8 to 11, right? And there was probably 5 or 6 of us. And we're there at night, and my mom's there hanging out. We always do that after we come back up from the lake during the day. We go sit in the hot springs. There's this older couple, and they're sitting in the same spring as us, and we're just talking to them, and they live in a cabin that's up in Featherville there. And they just start telling us this story. And you could tell that, like, looking back on it now, they knew that they were talking to a bunch of like 10-year-olds, right? So they were like, really just kind of playing up this story. But the whole story was about this freshwater shark that had come up and had taken residence in the lake. And so but they had like this, I mean, it was an hour-long tapestry that they had told us of like the way that it lives, why it's here, how it got here. I mean, it was so much information that like as a 10-year-old you're like, there's no way that this isn't true, you know. and so like, and Anderson, and it still might be, and that's where I am now. Like I went from the mode where it's like, this is the most terrifying thing ever, I believe 100% of this. I went about 10 years, I'm like, oh, there's just a bunch of old people pulling my leg. And then now I'm like, there probably is. Like I'm not discounting that at all, because Anderson's huge, dude. I mean, above the dam right there where it gets 200 something feet deep. I mean, that's prime for that.
Oh, yeah.
So funny.
I'm with you, man.
Well, on that note, you think about in Australia, they have such flooding season. You have a little, like, we'll just call it like a lagoon, an area where you can go, it's on your property, you can go swim with the kids, no problem. You get flooding season. These crocodiles will get pushed into the lagoons. Like, you will literally go out to a place that was swimmable, kind of recreational, and the next thing you know, you've got 2 crocodiles living in there, and they just destroy everything. Like, I don't know if there's not a more proven predator than a crocodile. I mean, it's unchanged for how many million years? It's like, they're terrifying. Like, if you can imagine anything at a larger scale, crocodile, I mean, they're not here, so they don't have the fear of them. But you take a 15-foot bear, a 30-foot crocodile, a 30-foot shark, whatever it is, and just magnify it by like 10%, 15%. That's a prehistoric animal, and it's fucking terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean,
bro?
Like,
think about like if I was like, hey, Brandon, you get to be like species creator for a day, and I want you to create the like ultimate apex predator, you'd probably create a mountain lion. Like, in my opinion, the mountain lion is terrifying, dude. Those things can walk up behind you and be breathing on your neck before you even know they're there.
Yep.
And then when he decides he's ready to kill you, he attacks your neck.
Game over.
It's like, it's the most terrifying thing. Not only are they bred to kill, but then when they decide to, they're going for your jugular.
Yep.
It's like, kill shot, dead. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Do you think they go back and tell their buddies, like, smoked and didn't go 20? Didn't go 20.
Or it's like, or they do the game, or they do the game where it's like, I got to 2 feet. I touched him on his shoulder and I ran away.
I've had it happen. I've had it happen twice. It's terrifying.
Oh man,
like, dude, wolves, bears, like, and none of it scares me. I'm kind of scared of mountain lions, dude.
Dude, I've been in some places. Terrifying. I've been in a couple places where I was walking around and I could tell, like, I knew I was in an area where they are. Like, I knew I was where they are. And I'm walking around this one like real small trail. I'm only like a mile and a half back or whatever, so it wasn't too far back. But there's like all this just prime rock and habitat, but then it drops off completely off of the other side. And I mean, it's one of those natural instinct things. Like, I wasn't going in there thinking like, they're definitely in here, I got to be on guard. But I walked around this one corner and my whole body just got like cold and like had just this real deep gut feeling where I'm like, dude, there's one around here. I can feel it. Like, I can just feel it. And so I literally like found a different way back, and I kind of hightailed it out and went back another way. I'm like, I am not going farther into this area. Like, I know there's one in here. I know, and I can feel him looking at me. Like, I don't know where he is, but he's in here somewhere.
I wish I knew the guy's name, but I know of a guy that spot and stalked and killed 2 with a recurve.
Just
sub 15 yards.
Just so gangster.
Well,
of all the stories of all these guys you told me, that honestly might be the most like impressive thing I've ever heard. It's insane.
And the thing about that guy, he's one of those guys, Drew from Selway.
Yeah, Drew knows him.
Sent me his trophy room. And he was like, this guy's not on the internet and no one knows who he is.
Yep.
but his trophy room is just smackdown mule deer after smackdown mule deer, and it is verified by a guide on one of them because he had told the story of the other, but the guide watched him spot and stalk the other one, and he got to about 6 yards on it and killed it from above.
It's
So
just,
I mean,
nuts, dude.
I mean,
you
both
can't
of
even
them sub
fathom
15, but he's got a witness at 6 yards on one. But yeah, that would
So
be
crazy.
like, and dude, I'm a big, I'm not a Fred Bear like stroker like some people are, but dude, Fred Bear was a bad, like, he got invited to India to kill a tiger that had been killing people, and he was up against 4 dudes with rifles, including the Maharaja, and he killed that tiger at about 70 yards with a recurve. Like, that's some pretty boss level
that's
stuff.
unreal, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what would be more like satisfying. A lion, I don't know that would be that satisfying. Not because of, I would kill a lion just on the grounds of having been African, having actually learned how overpopulated they are. I mean, Peter, the guide at Buck Africa, was telling me they can buy a male lion for $100 US. That's how. I mean, when you think about how cats proliferate here, just a regular cat. I mean,
Yep.
a lion is a cat. They're very very regular, like they're very common. So I would kill a lion on those grounds of one that was a problem, one that needed to be taken out. Tiger or mountain lion? I mean, obviously the tiger would have probably more of a prestige, but I think the mountain lion might be a more difficult challenge. I think.
So wild.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
That's awesome.
Unfortunately, we got to find a place to wrap. Austin's got stuff he's got to get to. We could probably do freaking 4 more hours on this. And we might just have to bring you back and do a part 2, man, because there was a bunch of stuff we didn't even get to today. I was going to ask you about.
I was ready to talk about, I wanted to talk about Daniel Boone killing like 450 bears in one spring. Like, why don't we talk about that enough? Like, that's, talk about hunting feats.
Right.
Well, listen. So a great story. I just finished the Meat Eater book, The Long Rifleman.
Long Hunters.
Yeah, Long Hunters. Yeah, Long Hunters. Thank you. And that was a good one. There's a lot about Boone, Crockett, those guys. But dude, Daniel Boone is a very, very interesting character. I mean, I'm 4 miles from Boone Tavern. Okay, so this was a local swing spot for the hipster, the big man.
So awesome.
And but Daniel Boone is a very, very complex individual. Very, very complex dude. We should have you back just to talk about Boone and Crockett.
We can do that.
Dude, I love Daniel Boone, man. His biography is one of the coolest books, Yeah, he was. You want to talk about being put into some internal conflicts on deciding what's right and wrong versus like your own moral compass. I mean, that guy was put in to make some decisions that had effects not only for his posterity but for the nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, those dudes were. I mean, not to say that they were cut different is like the biggest understatement of all time. Like they were different. As much as we're talking about ancient aliens and different civilizations, like they might as well have been their own civilization because they're a different kind of human.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing,
dude.
But
I
thanks you guys for
Austin.
having me on.
Yeah,
I appreciate you so much, man. Just in life and for this. So thank you, man.
Yeah, anytime. You guys are awesome.
All right, thanks, buddy.